Good afternoon. I know it would be easy to mistake the gentleman seated on stage for the last 5 cover models of GQ's Sexiest Man Alive, but don't worry, you are in the right place. They are in fact our speakers for the Creature Designers of Film and TV panel. We have decades of industry experience represented on stage. Our panelists have designed creatures for franchises such as Marvel, DC, Avatar, Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Jurassic Park, and Pirates of the Caribbean, just to name a few. They've worked for directors such as Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, J.J. Abrams, the Russo brothers, and Gore Verbinski. I could honestly go on, but I feel like if I listed all of their credits, it would take the entire time we have for the panel. My name is Zach Berger. I am a creature designer myself, and I will be your moderator today. Okay, we're going to get to our first question for a couple panelists, Luca and Konstantin. How did you get started? How did you break in? And any advice for people getting started?
I started in practical effects. Prior to that, right after I graduated Art Center College of Design, I had a portfolio of just ideas and concepts that I accumulated through my time at Art Center while actually Crash was teaching there. And he was a major part in my inspiration of actually knowing I can make this as a career. After I graduated, the only studio I knew of was a studio out in Chatsworth, and I just sent them my work, and they called me and went in.
See, it's just that easy.
No.
You just send them your work, and then they call you.
It actually wasn't that easy, no. And there were times I actually took my portfolio and just would go and knock at studios. Now, this is back in 1998 before all the accessibility that you have now online. And so these days, you have way more accessible. You can put your portfolio online. You can just email people, send them, just do a mass email and just send your stuff out there in hopes that they'll take a look at it. But yeah, that's how I broke in that respect.
Luca, anything to add?
I couldn't go to Chatsworth. I had another issue because I was on the other side of the planet in a country where they don't do
small issue.
A small issue. So I went to fine art school in Italy, but I wasn't happy there. The teachers were just teachers. That was my issue. I wanted to be a classical painter like you do in Italy, but my painting teacher, never sold a painting in her life. So it was hard to learn from her how to become a painter that can sell paintings. And one summer I got really frustrated, and that finally we had more internet in our house, so I could search the web, and I found the Normal School of Visual Effects. And I took a class with the gentleman right here, Jeremy Marantz, his creature design course, and that's when I understood, I want to be doing this, and creature was my love. And thanks to him, and also thanks to Francisco Corvino up here front, they were working at the Aaron Sims company, and I was working on my portfolio to try to present it there, try to get an internship, and that's how I ended up starting. I presented some of my work. I got lucky enough to be there for an internship, and then from there, my career started. If I had to give an advice, it's tough because nowadays we're dealing more with a globalized world. I don't know if I'll suggest somebody to have to come all the way to America from Europe or anywhere else, because now everything is so online. In the past, it has helped me more. I don't know if I can say that will help now. You have to move. I don't think you're forced to move. But definitely you want to go to a city that is big enough to have different talent because you want to learn from people. So definitely take some classes somewhere where the teachers are not just teachers but are professionals. And I think there is some of those in Europe for sure. That will give you a little approach to the professional life. And hopefully those professionals will help you get in.
That's actually really good advice. You guys have, if I'm giving a little bit of advice, you guys have feelers out in multiple industries, you kind of bounce around, so then when one is a little dry, you kind of have a couple backups, right? So everybody up here has been lucky enough to have had a lot of success designing creatures for a living, but if you could go back in time, what is something you would do differently in regards to your career?
I would start what I'm doing now earlier, but having spoken to a number of writers and people like J.J. Abrams and having the great fortune of picking their brain, the one thing that's been comforting to have been so delayed in that is I don't think I would have been ready, particularly in writing, to tell stories. My brain, I'm not there yet, and I will continue to learn, but my brain and my experience in life is now of greater value to storytelling. Whereas before, I would have been telling stories that were maybe a touch less useful to society.
Yeah, there are a few things I do differently. So when I ended up with a design portfolio coming out of Art Center, it was just filled with my own stuff, and that's what I was always very passionate about, telling my own stories. And that portfolio filled with original work gave me all of these incredible opportunities. But if I could do it over again, I'd probably go to film school, and I would probably aggressively put all of my effort into getting my own things off of the ground instead of spending every free moment I have currently doing that.
Constantine, you've worked in both, and several of us up here have worked in both practical and now, on fully CG characters. And you've sort of made a pretty great transition between those two worlds. What is the biggest difference in how you work and how you approach designing for both of those?
Well, back in the day, from the practical standpoint, I sculpted in oil-based clay. And these days, now I do everything digitally in ZBrush. Also, when building for a practical creature, as we all know here, because we've all worked in practical effects, how are you going to build it? Who's puppeteering it? Is it a guy in a suit? It just depends on the design. Is it a hybrid between practical and then digital, either erasing or augmentation? When dealing with a full CG creature character, it's easier in execution in that respect. It needs to just live and look like it's tangible part of the scene. Those are the differences in regards to designing something practical versus something completely fully CGI. It's more forgiving with digital, just as long as I think there's parameters. Sometimes younger designers tend to, because it's digital, tend to take it to a place where if you lose the audience and it's something so outlandish, I feel you kind of lose that connectivity. Whereas I really, even now with CG creatures, I really try and have something there that the viewer can relate to.
Yeah, and I think you can see it in your work. It's like I can see that background that you have of like you've designed the man in suit, you've designed like more of the practical makeup stuff, and then even when you're doing a CG character, there's that level of sort of reality and groundedness to it that I think really elevates it. Jared, I know you've done a little bit of both, and you do a lot of practical, designs for practical costumes now. Any difference between a fully CG result?
Well, it's always based on the limitations. Every assignment has a limitation, and I've noticed as a designer, we can get there faster if we essentially just embrace those limitations. So if it's an actor, that if it's a practical makeup, you can only go as far as maybe a couple of inches away from his face or his silhouette before things start to wiggle. All of that information when working practically makes essentially you a better designer of CG characters, because the bottom line is, when you do a CG character, the majority of the time, it's going to be a CG character on screen with an actor, with a point of reference. So after spending so much time designing in the real world, you're more adept at creating a believable CG character because you're hyper aware of physics and anatomy, and you have to create something that you believe could exist for real in that space. So they are connected, and you can look at those limitations with either if you're working with a real actor, a real performer, or a CG character, and you can actually use those to your advantage as a designer. So they kind of feed off of each other.
Crash, let's hear your take on designing for practical versus designing for CG, because I know you've done a lot of both.
Well, I agree with everything that everyone's been saying. I think Davy Jones was a good example. When I designed Davy Jones, it wasn't really clear that everything was going to be completely CG. And so, at the very least, we were going to use the actor's eyes. And as soon as we found out who the actor was, I found, images of him. And if you get that wrong, and you design something that looks really cool, but then when they put a makeup on him, and it doesn't look right is because you had the eyes too wide, or you had the mouth was too low, or so I was really strictly following the proportions of the actor, and it ended up that they replaced the eyes with CG. It was insane. But with all of that stuff around Davy Jones, it's really easy for the eyes to kind of feel small and kind of, pinched. I almost disagree that it's easier doing CG characters because you can do whatever you want. And to me, that's terrifying. I like having something to kind of like ground it and to work with first, and then kind of go from there. And the great thing about CG now, it looks so good. And my favorite is when it's just an augmentation of something that's actually there. I find a lot of directors wanting a practical character on set because the CG thing just got so out of control, that they would just be, here's a ball, here's the guy, this is trying to kill you, it's running after you. And as opposed to having,
Very
like on
scary,
Jurassic,
that's
when we had the full dinosaurs there, the actors reacted to it like, they were scary. They were scary. So I find that a lot of directors, especially in the lower budget realm, really wanting to have like something physical on set for the actors to react to.
I think we're going to have to call it there. We're being told to wrap it. But thank you so much for coming, and appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.